Thanks
So
so
today,
much.
yeah, today we're gonna, and you can see this is presentation with Ian at Hull LSM. See that?
Nicely done.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
So, yeah. So, so what we wanted to do today, we do this every year. It's our annual survey and see what our colleagues are doing, what we're charging, what practice, how we're practicing, things like that. So let's kick it off. Michaela, here we go. Everybody's got to vote. These webinars are free. And so you've got to, this is the one thing you have to do. So you got to vote. And so everybody make sure that they're voting, the polls are working, and then we're going to get right into it, Ian, and we've got a lot to cover. So we're going to first, great. So the polls are working. Let's get to the next one. So the first thing we want to do is find out about our practices. So are you a sole practitioner in that you're the only member of your firm that practices in estates and drafts wills, or are there more than one lawyer? That'll give us a sense when we're viewing fees and processes and things like that, to give us an idea of what who's filling these in. So that's great. All right. So we'll give it a second here. And so mostly solo and small firm practitioners, which like me and you, Ian. So that's great. So let's go to the next one and just figure out what regions we're in. So we're trying to figure out if we're big city lawyers, smaller city lawyers, etc. And that'll give us as well some indication of that kind of thing. Then we'll get right into the processes. All right, great. Well, thanks everybody for participating. So here we go. Michaela, pull it up. So this is about questionnaire. And do we usually send out questionnaires? Well, you know that data collection is the #1 issue for claims, right, Ian? Inadequate investigation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So most of us do use some form of questionnaire, and we're going to see approximately what. So basically, 75% or so send out questionnaires in advance of the meeting. Let's go to the next one and find out what form we're doing the questionnaire. Obviously, historically, we did everything on paper. You can do digital questionnaires. You can do paper questionnaires. Sometimes it's a blend, right? Because if you've got a younger client, they might be more comfortable with digital. Do you have any concerns, Ian, about who's filling in the questionnaire when you send it out? I think you're on.
I couldn't do it. I know I couldn't because I couldn't get off because of the screen. Yeah, no, I listen. It's like pulling teeth with a lot of clients, and that's the reality. But I don't have. I haven't had a lot of success in getting over that, except by emphasizing the importance of it in the terms of efficiency, and quite frankly, it's a cost effective for them to do it.
Yeah. So, it's a little larger. We're going towards online digital questionnaires. Last year, that number was not anywhere near 56%. So let's go to the next one. And obviously it's like pulling teeth. I thought this was interesting. Are my colleagues having the same problem in getting the data from our clients? And this is, if there was anything I wish I could cut out, would be the data collection and make that easier. I see that, and you can see in here that as the numbers grow, most of our clients are doing, I guess, better than 50%. It's just so difficult to get them to get that information that we need. They don't know why you have to give it to us and things like that, right? All right, let's go to the next one. So this is a new question that we've never asked before, but you know, I never collected any information about, and I don't know if you do, Ian, about not only the client's data, but also what their instructions are in advance of that meeting. And what's interesting to us is, you know, at eState, we get to hear from a whole bunch of different firms. And what was common for a lot of people was that they were collecting and they wanted to collect information about the instructions in advance. Do you have any thoughts on that, Ian, about, is there a disadvantage to getting that, or is there an advantage to getting those instructions, like the client's thoughts on their instructions before?
Well, yeah, it is. You know what, the problem I find is that it's, you don't want to create too much bureaucracy on the onboarding process with this information. So of course, there's a great advantage. I don't know, what do you find in your practice?
Yeah, see, I never collect that kind of, I never ask the client about what, you know, who do you want to name as an executor? What do you, we now offer that as a box if the client wants to, but I don't ask it specifically because I always felt that was better. I didn't have to talk somebody off what they had thought was going to be the right answer after I gave advice, but seems for sure like a majority of colleagues do that. They do want to collect that information. There is that advantage, you know, going in sort of where the client's coming from. So that might be something that I tend to change in my practice. Let's switch it up. Michaela's behind the scenes running these polls. And now we're getting into the file types. You know, Ian, what percentage would you say are your sort of typical everything, typical spouse then kids kind of file?
Over 50% for sure, well over 50%.
Yeah, I would probably be in the greater than 75%. You know, I think with you know, obviously tweaks and such, but that's, you know, for me would be a pretty high percentage. And here, that's what we're seeing as well, that the vast majority are of that ilk. So I'm hoping that everybody is able to see the results. Are people able to see the results?
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, they're coming up.
Great. Excellent. So what about acting for blended families? You know, this is my bugaboo, that I don't act where there's children from prior relationships. And I think there's a trend over time where people are becoming less or more hesitant to do it. Let's just see what the results is. This is very interesting, I think, to see what our colleagues are doing, because as a lawyer who doesn't ever act for, you know, I'd be in the never category. It's good to know that there are lawyers out there that they will do it, and there are circumstances. Do you have any suggestions on those three options, Ian?
Well, I think it you know, I'm in the rarely, but sometimes I'm not in the never. And I just think it can be, you know, so much depends on the planning. But if you can set it up in a situation where you're splitting the assets among the two different families at the back end, after the spouse dies, or the planning is in such a way that it's going to avoid a fight as best you can, I will do it. But you know, again, it's always covering myself, saying, look, this is potentially problematic.
Yep. All right, so let's go to the initial meeting, and let's see how practice has changed since we started these, and whether we're seeing more virtual than in person. And
yeah, I'll be interested to see how this one unfolds.
Yeah, and if you've just joined us and you don't mind, we'd love you to vote. That's the cost of joining this webinar today, is you gotta do some clicking. So we'd love if we had a really high result here, so that we get a good sample size for our colleagues and understand. So look at this. This is so interesting that it's a pretty even distribution, but still the largest percentage of people are doing almost everything virtually. So I'd be in that category. I do, you know, I'd say 100% of my meetings, planning meetings, are virtual. So that's interesting to see what our colleagues are doing.
Yeah, I think it's such an important thing to, I do think that virtual planning is absolutely, as long as you've got the right demonstration tools to use, is the way to go. And I don't think that should change. It's the, you know, it's not like litigation where you need more of a tactile relationship with the client, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, I know my clients like the ability to do it virtually, but it's not obviously for everybody. And
Yeah.
this is about, we get this question, Ian, all the time, and hope that everybody is seeing the results of these polls as we go. If you're not, maybe put it in the chat if there's a problem. But so, how long do we spend on this initial meeting? I mean, this is going to be the biggest meeting, probably the longest meeting you're going to have, and most of them are in the hour range. I know I almost always end the meeting at an hour, even if I haven't got everything done, unless I'm really close to getting everything. I find that after an hour, I've kind of lost my steam, and it's a lot for the client as well. So it seems that everybody is, 90% of the people are within 30 and 90 minutes of for that initial meeting. Great. Let's see what the next one is. And this is about retainers, Ian.
Mhm.
This has certainly changed over time. If we look back, 10 years ago, written retainers were not as frequently used as they are now.
Yeah, and I think it's just got to be a tool you have in your arsenal. It's very important, and it allows you to control the expectations for tax issues and things like that.
Yeah. And as I always say, the first question that Law Pro asks, if it's ever a Law Pro file, is do you have a retainer? And the second is, do you have a reporting letter? So let's go to the next one. And this is something I started about 15 years ago, to getting a deposit before I even meet with the client. And again, this is a business decision. But I hated all those files that were just sitting there, and I wasn't sure I was ever going to get paid on them. And so interestingly, that the majority don't get a deposit. And if you don't, that's obviously fine. It's a business decision. I feel a lot better drafting when I know that there's money there in trust. So
And
that's
also engages the clients too. I think it's a great idea.
yeah. So this is about client meetings now, and let's just turn to that and how we're doing. And I've made this pitch many times about how lawyers haven't changed their method of their process for client meetings in hundreds of years. And just wondering, are we still so reliant on words, or do we want to, do we do any kind of graphics or other kind of, I know sometimes I used to in the old days kind of write on a whiteboard or write little handwritten notes and turn them around to the client and show them, but it's still, very small percentage of using visualization, which I think is unfortunate, because I think it's a great way to whether it's your own PowerPoints or whatever, that's really impactful with the client to see it as opposed to just talking, blah, blah, blah kind of thing. All right. This will be particularly interesting to you about documentation, and how are we taking handwritten notes like we always did? Are we doing anything different? I Zoom record every meeting I have with a client. So I have the whole discussion, and it saves it, as you know, with Zoom. You can save the recording as a file. I save it in the file. It'll do a transcript. So if I ever want to look back at the meeting and find out when did we talk about the cottage or whatever else, it takes me to that point in the discussion. And I'm in the very small minority. We'd love to hear from the other 25% of people about what people are doing. It's interesting that we're certainly doing more note taking on computers, which is something that didn't always.
I find it's also one of these things about recording is that once you try it a few times with clients, you get over the concern. It really is. It's just as a matter of process that they, oh yeah, no problem. Especially you're doing Zoom calls, of course, and the service of paying that little extra fee for Zoom to get the written transcript is just so powerful. And it's just one of these things that I actually don't know why more people aren't doing it, because it is such an incredibly powerful tool at the back end if anything happens on a contentious basis.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at this. This is a question we've never asked before, which is, because especially you as you promote that idea of recording meetings as a litigator and also, and just looking at it, it seems to be the comfort of the client that's of most concern. And I can tell you, my clients, I do it all the time, and I ask obviously at first, and never had a client say anything else. It's like taking notes for me, but. Let's go to the next one.
Well, and that's why you explain it. It's not, this is it's an efficient way to me taking comprehensive notes.
Right. So the next is, what do we do after we've met with the client? What do we follow up with? Do we send them, a graphic summary, a text summary, a memo, or do we just say, listen, we're going to send you the draft. You'll get the draft in a little bit. That historically was all I did, really. I just, I met with them, said great, and then sent them the draft. Now, of course, there's different ways to get them other information faster and easier. And I can say that, certainly if you can produce some sort of summary of that meeting, that hour meeting or whatever it might be, is an intense meeting for the client. And they're probably not remembering everything that was said. What do you think, Ian? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's just no chance.
Yeah. And so, consider that's interesting that, about 50% do and 50% don't.
And psychologists say that, it's about 45 minutes maximum. You're going to have good attention span of anyone. So right. Keep that in mind.
Right. Great. All right. So let's check about number of client meetings. And then we will move to drafting. So typically, including the signing, I have 3 meetings always. I have my initial meeting, planning, at least 3, my review meeting, which takes about half an hour to go through the drafts and the plan and make any changes. And then the signing, which is quick. I don't allow changes at that point. That's saved me a lot of time. I built that up in COVID because I didn't want to be in the room for very long with a client. And so I basically said, listen, at the review meeting, we're going to finalize everything. So vast majority, or the majority of people, it looks like pretty much are doing it in 2 meetings. So a planning meeting and a signing meeting. Presumably that signing meeting is also the review meeting. So, and how long do we spend on a typical will file? I'd probably be just about 3 hours, I think, typically. Probably maybe a little less. It's mostly the initial meeting and the review meeting and the signing meeting as opposed to anything else, but that's where we're at there. Okay, so you can compare yourself to your colleagues. Certainly if you're spending, a large amount of time, obviously we hope that you're getting paid for that, right? And we'll talk about billing in a second. So let's go to the next one, Michaela. So who's doing the drafting here? Is it you as the lawyer who was meeting, or the person who was meeting with the client, or is it handing it off to a junior, or is it your clerk or your support staff that's doing the actual drafting? I know I do my own stuff because I have it generated, but automatically, but lots of people don't have that. So I'd be in the number 1 category there. Great. So let's move to the next. And here's technology. I'm interested in this, obviously, and so are you, Ian, about, I often joke that the only technology that's been introduced in the last 300 years in our business is the word processor. We're certainly seeing, well, it's nice to see more people using software. It can do things, and there are a bunch of different kinds of software out there. So, that's, wow, I'm actually shocked at that. So that's great. The good thing about software, as you know, is it eliminates those errors that you get with word processing. Let's go to the next one. Updating precedents. And we'll see. This will be an interesting one as well, about updating precedents. Ian, where do you, I mean, obviously we use eState, but, you know, we go to conferences, we're following the media, we're following the speaking, not so much the media. You know, that's basically where we find it. It's funny, you know, our wording comes from historic ideas, and yet we always have to update it. So that's good. Most people are satisfied with where they're at with things. So great.
I typically update when I get a file in that's contentious and I see the problem, I go, uh-oh,
Right. Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
changing my precedent on this. The definition of income and a spousal trust, make sure it's described properly for tax purposes or something like that. I'll definitely jump all over if I have to.
Yeah. And all the CLE that we go to, and, you know,
Yeah.
those things that scare us. All right. So we're going to skip, when we finish this, Michaela, we're going to skip to 20 about multiple wills. Let's see what the results are here. And so there's, you know, the good thing is we're getting our documents out within 3 weeks or so. You know, I know I could do it a lot faster if I could, and it feels better not to have that backlog of, but that seems to be a reasonable amount. Would you agree, absent sort of immediate urgent issues, 3 weeks to get drafts to clients?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, good. And you know, we're seeing more, and we've talked about this recently, Ian, about multiple wills and how we're seeing them being used more frequently, and almost that it's,
Right.
you know, should be almost regular. So let's see what percentage of files you draft and your colleagues draft. Let's maybe just run this. If we could get the rest of the people, if they don't mind filling these in, that would be great. So, you know, it's a smaller percentage, certainly not, you know, a majority of the time. So that's, you know, obviously more you see those claims where somebody says, the kids, obviously, well, mom would have spent the extra money to avoid the probate tax for me. But right, that's what always happens.
That's right.
All right, let's go to execution and storage. And we're running a little late. Okay, so we're gonna skip. We'll do the first one, remote executions, and then we'll do holding originals, and that'll be the next one. So let's see, how many are we doing? How many remote executions? I know we did them, you know, in COVID and we didn't know exactly what we were doing. We were flying by the seat of our pants. I avoid them now because of the difficulty in, you know, the administration, just the process of sending them around and those kinds of things. So certainly it is in the minority. So that tells you about that. So let's just go to the holding of originals and see what percentage of us hold originals. And then we are going to turn to billing and fees. And we're pretty much on time, which is good. So how many of us hold originals? And I would say that the trend, and this is sort of what you would expect, right? It's either you always keep, you know, you regularly keep them, or you almost never keep them. And it's, you know, not way off there, but, you know, 40% never keep them. And then the rest of the 60% keep them sometimes. And so that's helpful. Great. So let's go to the fees and billings test. And this is one where everybody wants to know. It's probably the most popular question, Ian, you get, is like, how much do you charge? How much should I charge? What am I charging? Am I charging enough? And so let's find out first how people generally charge for wills. I'm a flat fee biller, except in rare situations, but we're talking about here a typical will, your typical will. Don't worry, it's anonymous, so you can put in your answer. Nobody's going to tell you, nobody's going to know who said what. So that's where we're at. Mostly flat fee, which is what you'd expect. So let's go to the next question and find out, what are we charging? This is, and we would have one, I think, over. See, I would be over maybe there are more options. Yes, there are more options. Great. Because typically, and I'm Midtown Toronto, my practice is my base fee is $2,500 for this kind of thing. And you probably everyone out there is saying, boy, he's not worth that. And so do my clients, but some of them, few of them pay. But you've got to look at, I mean, let's just stay here for a second, Ian, because this is what people really want to see. Certainly the trend is upward, which is good. I'm sure we don't charge enough for what we do, except for you, probably you charge enough, but you see the range. We're mostly in the 1,000 to 2,000 range for this kind of work, and I'm sure a lot of it deals with what jurisdiction you're in, what's your primary work, those kinds of things. I always think about if I'm going to spend 3 hours on a file, what's my hourly rate plus liability, and make sure I'm getting that for the time. So that just we have that on the screen, so you can see we got an 86% response rate, and that gives you a sense of what your colleagues are charging. Let's go to the next one. Do you charge extra for multiple wills? For me, I'd be in the 1,000 to 2,000. I'd be the 1,000. That's what I charge. So if I'm doing whatever will I'm doing, and I'm doing multiple wills for the one client or both clients, I charge $1,000 more. It takes longer to sign, takes longer to review, harder to explain to the client. They're going to call you a bunch of times and say, why did we do 2 wills again? And the good thing is, if you use software, it shouldn't take you a second longer to generate and create multiple wills as single wills. But there is the additional liability and other things. So pretty evenly, some don't charge anything. Again, I keep in mind what your colleagues are doing, and yeah, that's a pretty interesting distribution. At least we're all charging more for it. That's good. That's good. Of course, we only gave one option for 0. Ian, anything on that?
No, I think that's great. Look, my experience is creeping it up is not, people don't shy away, and you're going to get much more satisfaction. Let's
flip to the next one. We'll do these in rapid fire. Any additional charge if you're doing remote execution? So I typically don't, unfortunately, and that's why I don't do them. But so let's just see quickly, and then move to the next one, Michaela, once we get a good number here, because that's really about. That's great. Okay, so most are not charging more, even though it's a bigger pain. All right, let's go to the next one, which is satisfaction with the fee. You have that? Oh, there we go. So are you satisfied with what you charge? And this will be an interesting poll, I think. Are you satisfied with what you're charging? Ian, you haven't obviously voted yet. Yeah. So look at this, guys. Okay, this may be the most important thing that you'll see. I mean, we're not satisfied generally with the fee. Nobody thinks we're charging too much, and that might be a function of how much time this takes, how much liability it takes, and I would encourage you, if you're not satisfied with your fee, if there are efficiencies that you can increase, do that. You might be happier with your fee if you're spending less time doing things and that kind of thing. But take that, we're not charging enough, and maybe the boards that represent us, like the OBA, should be helping us market to clients to understand the value that we provide. Great. So let's skip this one if you don't mind, Michaela, and let's go lastly, in the last 2 minutes, let's just go to the final thing, which is the future of estates practice. If you can, I wanted to raise this. This will be a quick one, but what change in the law would you like to see in our area next, what you'd most like to see, and be interesting to see. I'm a big believer in getting rid of the revocation by destruction. Personally, that's what I'd like to see done first. I think it's easy, and I don't think we need revocation by destruction anymore. But this is interesting, Ian. So hopefully
Yeah.
everybody will vote, and we'd love to see what our colleagues think about this, because we do want to bring this to the attention of the Attorney General, who's been very sympathetic to our bar and helpful in many areas. So this is helpful to see. So if you haven't voted, we'd love you to vote on one of those four, and that would be great. Last question, and it's the elephant in the room, I think, so that's great. Can you run the last one, Michaela, which is, what about AI? Do you see artificial intelligence dramatically changing your estate planning practice? And I'd love to hear everybody who was on this, who participated, to chime in with their thoughts. Because for me, this is and for you, Ian, and for all of us, it's an important concept to consider. So interestingly, most of us don't see AI dramatically changing our estate practice, 55-45. So we will see in the upcoming years. The last question, do we see, I forgot that we had this one question, and then we'll let everybody go. Do you see do-it-yourself wills, like a willful software, as a threat to our practice? As you know, the Law Society, of which you're a medal award winner, chose Willful as their first software to, in essence, endorse a software that is do-it-yourself for people to do it without lawyers. Interesting results. I mean, half of us view it as a threat, and half of us don't. I would suggest to you that our leaders should be out there showing the public why lawyers are valuable, and do-it-yourself is not the way to go for most people. Ian, any last concluding thoughts?
No, I think that's great, and I can tell you that they didn't listen to me. They'll have to listen to you as the leader.
And they're not listening to me. You're the LSM.
I am the
thank
LSM.
you, everybody. You can, if you want to rewatch this and see what the results were, if you missed any of them, we'll make it available. We thank you for being an active participant in this. We hope that this was of use to see what your colleagues are doing, and we're going to compare it to last year's and see how things have gone. So thank you, everybody. Next Tuesday, we do our user webinar. So if you're an eState user, please join me on Tuesday. And then next Thursday, we're back for another webinar with Ian. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you again.
Thanks a lot, Jordy.
Thanks.